So we're going to start our next session. The shape and size of Kylie Jenner's lips influences the demand of fillers. Hair fillers, organic fillers, biostimulators, more is less or less is more. DIY beauty, these are the few trends we all saw. So what's next? As a marketer, we are always interested to understand what are the new trends which are there in the facial aesthetic market. So to answer this question, we have invited two speakers from the industry who will be sharing their information, their understanding about the new upcoming trends which are there in the facial aesthetic market. So today, we have Dr. Nazila Zoulfaghari. She is the CEO and founder of NZI Aesthetic Consulting Agency with us today. She is an aesthetic industry leader with over 17 years of experience spread through 30 countries. She has been invited to lots of international and local sessions. Also, she is a superstar in the news media. So welcome, Dr. Nazila. And we also have Mr. Mohamed with us today. He is the head of marketing for Allergan Aesthetics. His passion is more toward creating new brands, achieving strategical success, and commercial success also. He has a very good understanding about the Middle East market. So I will be inviting our speaker, Mr. Mohamed, first to please share his presentation today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me today. I think it's a great opportunity, and I would like to thank the organizers. I would like to thank our esteemed guest who spoke in the morning about the regulatory environment. I think we're dedicating the next section of today to the trends. We heard it from our speakers in the morning. Aesthetics has been evolving. Medical aesthetics and medical devices have been evolving a lot. And I'm really honored to be here today to talk from an industry perspective about the trends that we've noticed, the trends that we've realized, and how are we taking this forward, and how we're collaborating as different stakeholders of this industry moving forward. So again, thank you for the time today, and welcome to the future of aesthetics. Why are we talking aesthetics? We're talking aesthetics because it has become an extremely important industry. We're talking about an industry that in 2021 has reached almost $11 billion, and the $11 billion is with injectables, which is almost half of it. So when we're talking about dermal fillers, when we're talking about toxins, it's almost half of this industry. But that is closely followed by energy power devices, so all your lasers, all the machines that we're seeing in the clinics. We're talking about breast implants, and definitely we're talking about the borderline between cosmetics and pharmaceuticals, so all those HCP prescribed cosmeceuticals. This is one of the industries that rebounded a lot right after COVID, and that is still growing at a very, very fast pace of 10%. So if we zoom in to the injectable market, we will find that this market is currently at $5 billion. In the coming 3 years will probably double. Okay, so that should raise the alarm of, okay, so where is this industry going? And that's the reason I'm here today. I'm here today, as mentioned, as part of Allergan Aesthetics. Just a quick note about Allergan Aesthetics. Allergan Aesthetics is one of the leaders of the industry. We pride ourselves to be a science-based company that is in the research and development and the marketing and promoting of dermal filler, toxins, and Sorry? Okay. Okay, that wasn't for me. At Allergan Aesthetics, as the leader of this industry, we have some corporate values. And to share with you the main corporate values, we would like to connect to our patients. We are putting science at the core of everything that we do. And this is important because before launching any product into the market, before going ahead and communicating to the regulatory environment, to the different stakeholders, to the HCPs, we do a lot of clinical studies and clinical research. We pride ourselves that we would like to think about creating what's next. We were a pioneer in toxins. We were a leader in dermal fillers. Now we're taking body contouring to the next level and the hybrid injectables with different launches in different markets. We work a lot with our doctors. So this is the value that we call making your practice our purpose, and we're very inclusive of all people. And why did I mention all these values? Because these values were the key elements that helped us and encouraged us to create what we call the Global Trends Report. We needed to understand, as the leader, as one of the leaders of this industry, what's next? What's happening to this industry? Obviously, if any of you check social media, go on their phone, Google, you will find a lot of information about the aesthetics industry. You'll find a lot of information about new medical devices, new launches. But this also comes with a lot of responsibilities because there is a lot of news out there, people talking about it, but how can you differentiate between what's real and what's not really real? Okay? And this is what helped us embark on this research, what we call the Global Trends Report. So how did we do that? We did that through, first, social listening. We contracted a company that does this for us. We did that through talking to a lot of our KOL across the globe. All right? So that was around 15,000 pieces of information that we collected together, and then we conducted one-on-one interviews with those 15 KOLs from around the globe. And we identified 4 different pillars of what are the themes that are driving those consumers. There is a behavioral change, all right? So one of the themes is that there is beauty empowerment. Consumers are engaging much more into the conversation. And they're engaging into the conversation because they spend time reading about it, hearing about it from friends, and talking to each other about it. And this is what we call the aesthetic fluency, all right? So it's like a literacy program. People now, when you talk to them, they understand about the aesthetic industry. They know a little bit more about the aesthetic industry, and they also helped what we call reducing the stigma. So it's not a taboo anymore to go through an aesthetics treatment. And if it's not a taboo anymore, that means that a lot more people are getting into the industry. But these people need to be equipped with the right information, and this is why it's also important for them to go back to nature. There is this theme about, okay, natural beauty and natural ingredients in their beauty regimes. We've identified top 10 trends, but I would like to focus only on 4. All right? I don't have the time to go for the 10 trends, but I've chosen only 4 that are the most relevant for our industry. And I will present the trends by mentioning one of the quotes that we got from our key opinion leaders from around the globe, and then talk you through the different trends. So, a plastic surgeon from Puerto Rico, which is one of our key opinion leaders that helped write the report, I think his quote is extremely interesting because if we think about the history of aesthetics, we would always have in mind, unfortunately, that white, Caucasian, middle-aged woman, all right? So this is the image that was there everywhere when we think about aesthetics, when we think about cosmetics. And like Allergan Aesthetics, our KOL thinks that this will change. We will see a lot more people from different ethnicity, from different backgrounds, coming into the industry and asking for aesthetic treatments. Okay, how does this affect us? One, it definitely affects our design for clinical studies. It definitely affects our design for even products, because then the products need to fulfill the anatomy and the requirements for all the shapes, all the faces, and all the skin tones, all right? We're here not looking about only white, middle-aged Caucasian women, but a lot more on the diversity of the product and the product need. So the one trend that we're seeing, and we're seeing this very clearly in our region and in different regions, is that there is a need for diversity and a need for diverse individuality when you're recommending the treatment. And it's also important that the doctors understand this, and the doctors, they understand that it's not only a one-size-fits-all, or that it's not only one treatment plan for every single patient that come in. They have to have proper consultation with them, and they have to understand their needs, and they have to recommend the products that would fit their skin tone, skin quality, and definitely any other anatomy or ethnicity consideration that they have to look into. Trend number 2 that I would like to talk about is the environment, the clinic, all right? We are seeing a shift between having the treatment in polyclinics, having the treatment in the offices of the doctor, to an experience that the clinics now are delivering and developing for the patients coming in. Spa-like experience. And we call this elevated experiences. So more and more, we're seeing that there are aesthetic-focused environments and clinics that are coming to play. It is not only the dermatology or the plastic surgery surgeon's office, but more and more of that spa-looking a clinic that is coming across. But here is the important part for all of us. While it is really that, yes, elevated experience, but it's also important not to forget that this is a medical treatment. So while, yes, you have a very good experience, but it's also important that the people that will deliver this experience are qualified, well-trained, and they use the right products. And I think some people miss that, unfortunately, in our region, but it's also important. These are professional doctors, professional nurses, and well-trained employees of these clinics. So it's not only that we're getting, this is a nice experience and let's go for an injectable treatment. This should not be the case. Trend number 3 is that we're seeing a lot more millennials and younger generation going for treatment. A lot more of them, they go for treatments because they thought, you know what, I don't have to wait until I'm 60 to get my first toxin injection. I don't have to wait until I start getting saggy skin to start my beauty regime. And that, for us, is a thrive from consumers to end the aging process, not really end it, but actually elongate the aging process as we start earlier. So they now start a lot earlier going into aesthetics clinic. That in itself is very important. Why? Because where are these getting their information from? Unfortunately, they're getting their information from social media, they're getting information from different digital channels, and unfortunately, they're getting not the right information all the time. So when we're seeing these younger generation coming into the clinics, we want to make sure that they are, first of all, well-equipped with the right information, and second, they didn't see something on social media that they want to, that they do want to copy. And that takes us to the fourth trend and my last point for this presentation. And I love this quote from one of our KOLs in the UK. Just a quick note about the UK. It's not like here in the region. In the UK, actual nurses can do an injection, all right? So they don't have to be a trained doctor or a trained dermatologist or plastic surgeons. 1 month of training and a nurse can go for a filler or a toxin. And that is a problem because like our KOL said, I spend a lot of time correcting other practitioners' work. And here is where I would like to spend, and I think it's very important because of the audience of this conference, a trend that we call the aesthetic ethics, all right? We think that aesthetics is a practice that must be held to high standards, all right? And obviously, as one of the leaders of the industry at Allergan Aesthetics, we would like to work with all the stakeholders to uphold them to these high standards. But what do we mean? We have the ethical obligation to regulate this market and to stop, to quote the words of our friends in social media, the fake news, all right? People see so many unrealistic, filtered things on social media and digital, and they need to be able to differentiate between what's real and what's not real, what can be done and what can't be done. And as an industry, as brands, and as practitioners, and obviously as regulators, we all have the responsibilities to go for, I wouldn't say regulating the environment, because that environment is extremely difficult to regulate, but at least to provide the right trainings, the right support, and the right framework and the guidelines for everyone within this industry to make the right choices. There are three things that at our end of the table, we are very clear that we need to start working on. One is counterfeit beauty. Counterfeit beauty is when you shortcut things, is when you add in filters. It's when you use, I wouldn't say Photoshop, but there are a lot better editing softwares now where you can do them very, very quickly, and then you look skinner, you have the right skin tone, and then, but this is counterfeit beauty. So, and that is a poor practice, and this is not only a problem here in the region, but it's everywhere in the world, and it's a worldwide phenomena. Also, we have a lot of those gray or illegal clinics that are providing not necessarily the right products and not necessarily the legally imported products and not necessarily the not counterfeit products to their patients. And guess what? That will come back to us, because we are the face and the accountable entities in the industry, and if we, la qaddar Allah, have a problem with the patient safety, and I know that my colleagues will be talking a lot about patient safety and the importance of holding ourselves accountable for PV, but that is coming back to us. So we have to stop those illegal clinics. The second pillar is the social dilemma, yeah, I'm using the name of the very interesting Netflix documentary, but it is really a social dilemma, because in the past people were looking at magazines. They were looking at pictures and magazines. Oh, I would like to look like that person. But now everyone is looking at Instagram and they want to look like these persons. It is the responsibility of the doctors to tell them, this can work for you or this cannot work for you. You cannot look like X celebrity or X influencer. It's not possible, all right? And this is what we're asking all the doctors that work with Allergan Aesthetics, to have that proper consultation, dialogue, discussion with their patients before treatment, so that they set their expectation and overcome this social dilemma. And the last but not least is up-leveling this whole aesthetic ethics. So as an industry, with your help, with the help of our professional doctors, we would like to make sure that everyone within that industry is using a certain high standard of, one, treatment, and two, doing what's best for their patients and not doing what their patients are asking only. We have to be able to say no and set the right expectations and use very high standards. And from our end, we do this through training, but also from the doctor's end, it will have to be the consultation techniques. And from the regulatory end, we would like to see the right frameworks, the right guidance for all of us, as doctors and as brands. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. I really like the part of your presentation where you mentioned inclusivity and no age restriction treatments now being offered in the aesthetic market. Well, I would like to invite our second speaker, Dr. Nazila. Please give her a big round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you all feeling after the break? Are you energized? Feeling good? Great. Well, I'm so excited to be back here. Thank you so much to ACRAS and Hub Plus for creating this phenomenal forum that brings us all together to have these really interesting conversations to build and create more of a footprint in the aesthetic industry. So thank you to our colleague, Mohamed, for this very poignant discussion. And I think it starts a conversation that I want us all to be engaged in. Because I think aesthetics is something that is growing and building day by day, and there are so many external influences, and we all play a part. So I think this is one of the key points I want to discuss. Who is the key stakeholder that is really relevant in the aesthetics industry? Is it the doctor? Is it the consumer? Is it the manufacturer? Everyone is playing a part. So we all need to take engagement and responsibility to create a safer outcome for patients. Do you agree? Show of hands. Excellent. So we're on the same page. So let's get started. Okay. Beauty ideals. So what does beauty really mean? To understand the trends, we really need to see what do we see as beautiful. And I think this is a really engaging point, because as Nefertiti is the ACRAS logo, what we can see is that beauty in different cultures, in different times, has meant so many different things. For us, we've seen through the decades the different concept of beauty, the different view, and it's really important to understand as a starting point, it's okay to have a different view of beauty, but where do we stop to create patient safety? Because facial and body dysmorphia is also on the dark side of that, so we have to keep that in mind as well. Now, moving to a new era, this is actually an extension of the Allergan 360 report, so it's actually a nice continuation of Mohamed's lecture. And here what we see in this report is the taboo has actually lifted. And what we can see is the percentiles are so high, and consumers here have ushered a new era of openness about medical aesthetics. So it's no longer a taboo or something to shy away from. People are actually really interested in looking at beauty as an overall part of wellness. So here we can see that, let's take one of the numbers. 83% of consumers worldwide are willing to invest in their appearance. So nowadays, I think, especially after the pandemic, we all became a little bit more concerned about our looks. We want to invest more, we want to feel better. So I think these numbers are really indicating that consumers are taking more of an avid interest in researching and learning about how they can look better. And this is one of the quotes from Dr. Stephen Dayan, a plastic surgeon in Chicago. Aesthetic treatments are becoming a greater part of overall wellness and self-care. So nowadays, looking at one's beauty is similar to going to the gym, eating healthy. So we're becoming more normalized when it comes to aesthetic treatments. That has pros and it also has cons. So I think we have to also be mindful of how we take this conversation, because obviously it's also got a parameter where we want to make sure that patient safety is always at top of the mind and thoughts of what we're doing as industry leaders, as authorities. Governing this, we always need to have that as a prime ethical element to our business. Here what we can see with McKinsey, and there are different numbers out there, and I think it's a basis on the parameter of what elements of the aesthetic products are included, but what we can see generally is the compound average growth rate from 21 to 26 is growing by around 12%, and it's pegged at $7 billion US dollars, moving to 12 billion. So we can see in the global injectables market, there is such a growth trajectory, and that's obviously governed by a lot what's going on in terms of trends, in terms of social media. So this is what we're going to explore a little bit further at the minute. Here, it's really interesting to see Dr. Vandana's perspective, who's talking about social media is not any longer for posting photos only, it's also research. So how many of you actually go onto your Instagram, your social media, different platforms obviously, and actually research things, look at things, and then sort of create some thought-provoking ideas about treatments or where to go, what to do? How many of you? Show of hands, please. I certainly do. I use it as a reference and it starts generating some interest. So I think there's not many hands, so I think you're not living in the digital world yet. What's going on? Maybe next year. So here what we can see is 20% of the consumers, they're following a physician online. So that while that's great, I think for this particular forum in ACRAS, it would be a very thought-provoking topic to discuss. As social media is so global, there's not one particular authority in charge. How do we then regulate this? As industries, as companies, producers, doctors, how do we create the regulation behind this? Because now there's a lot of content online, but is it actually going to be, a guideline to this? How do we create that? There are so many questions out there. And I think this lecture is more to actually create those thoughts and to have a discussion point where we can create those milestones together, because it's not an answer that's going to be a yes or a no today. But how can we create those guidelines together to make it a safer place for patients in the long run? So now talking about the trends, the hot topics, are you ready? So let's see. Filler or filter, that's the question. So this is on the back of your discussion, Mohamed. I think what is ideal here? Is it real? Is it not? Is it photoshopped? Are these really treatments? And what is it actually delivering as a message to consumers? So here, whilst yes, we can see the transition as one of great beauty, perhaps it's different ideals, perhaps some of you think it's too much or too little, but really what message is this giving out? And how can we create those controls? So I want us to think about this more avidly. And I want each of the stakeholders, whether it be doctors who need to have that engagement of training, producers and manufacturers who can actually extend and offer that training to doctors, governing bodies that can create a more of a guideline or ecosystem that is endorsed. How can we each take part in this to create something that's a safer outcome for the patients and ultimately the consumers that are getting all this information fed to them. So here are some of the consumer needs, and ultimately this is what's driving the demand. Natural has become, and this is probably welcome for a lot of people who are interested in more of a natural outcome, but au naturel has become more of a trending topic. So I think we're moving and steering away from having too much projection and volume and transformation, and moving more into having natural rejuvenation and skin quality procedures. Minimally invasive treatments. I think nowadays, as we've got such busy lifestyles, people are not looking to have such high downtime. So you want to have a treatment and be able to go back to work, to be able to function normally. So I think this is one of the key elements of having easier treatments that are minimally invasive to be complementary to your beauty. Skin inclusivity, which is protocols, looking more at your skin, how you can create benefits, and it's more of a wellness conversation. And synergistic treatments, so combinations that are working well as well. So these are overall the trends that have been collected through the search engines to understand what will be the future of aesthetics. And what's driving this? Well, we've got social media, which is the #1 search engine for everyone at the minute. We've got aesthetic service outlets, as mentioned in the previous lecture, that are proliferating, and a lot of this is because there's more and more services that people are looking for. So they're going to their doctors, they're going to clinics, med spas, people are really experiencing a wellness phenomenon. New indications, which are also gaining traction, looking at neuromodulators or fillers, what we've seen is a growth tenfold on social media of advertising these treatment pathways. To give you an example, there's about 10 new indications coming up in 2025 in China, in North America, so there are a lot of new indications that are on the horizon. And providers that are meeting patient needs. So manufacturers looking at what do the patients actually need, what do doctors look for more and more. So in terms of neuromodulators, whereas before it was more focused on, let's say, the upper third of the face, people are looking for longer duration when it comes to toxin. They're looking for, ease of reconstitution, so liquid form. So there's a lot of new conversations that are bringing about new trends. And lastly, patient preferences that increasingly influence channel behavior. So of course now patients are so well attuned to new treatments, researching, looking, they're going and actually being very sort of open-minded to talk to doctors about the type of product they want, the type of treatment they want. So they're a lot more aware, and that's because of the search, that's because of the reviews that they've done. There's a lot of investigation that goes in. So now patients are actually the ones that are driving conversations with doctors. And so in doctors, we trust. So lastly, talking about the safety. So what's really interesting here is that the top 3 questions that patients ask to their doctors are similarly based on cost, on efficacy, so the effectiveness of treatment, and lastly, the safety. So these are the 3 topics that are top of mind for each and every consumer. So how do we address that? So just some governing steps, and this is just some brainstorming and thoughts, and I'd love to get your opinions and questions on this. So basically, how do we get our thinking caps on to the regulators? We really need to come together and create some milestones together where we can create a safer environment. So perhaps encouraging and engaging to create a safer ecosystem. So not just leaving it to the wider parameter of some of these sort of platforms like TikTok or Snapchat, and you've got to remind me what their names are because I'm not on all of them, but as we're seeing all of these platforms grow, how can we create together an ecosystem that's endorsed perhaps by authorities and has content that's approved, and we can encourage doctors to post on these ecosystems as opposed to just going to every single platform. So this perhaps could be one of the ways. Secondly, incentivizing smarter patient outcomes. And I think this is where regulatory bodies and authorities are really taking a very strong position to ensure quality products. As we've heard all morning, quality products are coming into the countries. And I think this is one of the key parameters that everyone's working hard on and is certainly going to have a huge impact so consumers have the best quality first-in-class products. And lastly, supporting platforms that drive consumers to have a stronger knowledge. We have to be aware that patients are continuing to build their knowledge base on these social platforms. So how can we encourage that and build a stronger area where they can have accurate information and we can have a reference point within these ecosystems? So just to end up, so in terms of recommendations, when we talk about patient safety, what are the top 3 that I would say in terms of recommendation? Continued education for physicians, I think, is absolutely key. So they continue to grow in terms of educational pathway when it comes to anatomy, when it comes to complications. They have workshops that they are ready and prepared to manage any and all complications. 2, knowledge is power, so continue to educate the consumers and create a gateway where they can actually go as a reference point, and we're all clear of mind that we know that the information there is well built. And lastly, develop online platforms with monitored ecosystems, and I think that's going to come into play when manufacturers, doctors, and governing bodies all come together. So I think these would be the 3 parameters that we could look for in the future. So that's everything on the future trends from my side, and I'd like to just end on this really fabulous quote, which I think always inspires me, particularly living in Dubai for over 14 years. The future belongs to those who can imagine it, design it, and execute it. It isn't something you await, but rather you create. So I think living in Dubai, this is something that from Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum is a quote that really is about the future and that we all play a part in this. So let's all come together to create a better outcome for the aesthetics footprint. Thank you, everybody.
Well, I must say what a provocative and well-put presentation we had from Dr. Nazila. I really like the part where you guided the regulatory bodies about supporting the platforms which are bringing more safer consumer education. So from this point, we would like to take ahead our session today for a panel discussion. I will request our panelists to please join, Dr. Nazila, Mr. Mohammed, Dr. Noora, and Mr. Faisal, please. So this is how the panel discussion will move ahead. I'm going to throw some questions to our panelists, but I will like a very interactive session from the audience also. Please prepare your questions. We will take your questions either in between, or if you want to raise your hands to ask any question while we are discussing the topic, please feel free to do so. This session is more about creating a platform to understand what needs to be done. And I believe, like all of us, our panelists also understand the challenge which is there existing in today's aesthetic industry towards striking the right balance between advertising, marketing, and the paramount importance of patient safety. So I will like to start the discussion by asking a question to Mr. Mohammed first. Mr. Mohammed, in your presentation, you mentioned about the regulations which are there in the UK market, which are upcoming, like the CAP and the BCAP guidelines. So there are lots of new things in the guidance, like age-restrictive marketing. You cannot market beyond the age of 18. The serious consequences which a medical practitioner might face in case they are marketing their own treatments in a non-justified manner on the platforms. So what do you think that these regulations being coming up in the Western world, do you think that GCC as a region is prepared to handle it, or we are already in the path ahead than the West in managing these situations?
No, I think, thank you. I think that's a very interesting question. And I would say that in the region here, I think the regulations is there. I take note of the UAE regulation. I take note of SFDA. There is a lot of guidance when it comes to before direct-to-consumer communication, where you have to go through a stringent process as a manufacturer. What we would lack is the other stakeholders that Dr. Nazila spoke about, because there are clinics that are advertising, there are doctors that are talking and discussing, and so it's how you can. So the framework is there, is how you can create that umbrella that takes the different communicators within that framework. I think the brands and the manufacturers and their agents are following, are compliant, or at least most of them, but it's the rest of the ecosystem that needs to come in to that too. So that was a very long answer to your question. Are we there or not there? I think the frameworks are there. In most cases, it's how you implement that framework and make sure that you educate the different people about that framework and the regulatory environment that follows.
Okay, so I agree with you that there are some existing guidelines, frameworks in the GCC region. So this leads to my second question to Mr. Faisal. As far as I know, SFDA has MDS G11, the guidance number 11, which provides guidance on approval requirements for medical device advertising. So can you please share some insight about those guidance, and what will be your advice to my colleagues or the medical device marketers who wants to market their product or their medical device in KSA?
As I mentioned in the morning, the medical device law, one of the updates in the new medical device law was stating that advertising shall be controlled and regulated more and more. Of course, it was regulated since before, but that area we are talking now is the online advertising, which is, I think, a big headache for authorities and concerned parties dealing with advertisement. Sadly, it's an open market. It's completely not controlled. The situation in Saudi Arabia, and I will give that as an example, we are working in collaboration at the moment with the Ministry of Commerce, since they are responsible for the social media or social platforms. We are trying to enforce that no advertisement material related to medical device or pharmaceutical product shall be done unapproved without having an SFDA approval. So we are trying to use other agencies, other authorities to enforce our regulations. Going back to the MDS G11, this was developed and published mid of last year. It was updated mid of last year. It's been there for almost 4 or 5 years. Some sections were added to it, such as bundling in the material of itself or the content of the advertisement, including the Arabic language where it should be included in the advertisement. And also there we invented, or we came up, created with a new pathway to upgrade. So not all the devices that I want to go and advertise to in Saudi Arabia needs to have a MIDMA certificate. There is a device that I'm not going to market at the moment, but I need to advertise for. So there is a new regulatory scheme that you can go through. You can apply. There is a certain set of requirements which are mentioned in the guidance. And by hopefully first quarter, there is a new version of this guidance. It will be introduced to the market. So I urge all manufacturers, distributors, importers, authorized representatives to follow the SFDA website for the new documents, because I'm sure there will be a lot of updates in that document they will be interested in.
Okay, so Dr. Nazila, do you think that these guidance which is available, these are not laws, these are like something which the companies needs to have a voluntary adherence. So do you really feel that these guidelines are, or this guidance is good enough right now for us, or should we be like these are the stepping stones and probably these can be further drafted or further updated to make them more stringent?
That's a great question. I think it's a good talking point. I think you're never quite there. I think we're always engaging, and is this loud? Is this echoing? I think it's always a poignant view to have that we are always striving to do better. So I think the more and more we have engagements, we have the right stakeholders in the right place, we can create more inroads to having the right outcomes that we want and guidelines that make sense, protocols that are correct, you know, and then we can actually follow them and have that adherence. So I think it's never that you've reached a point that everything is perfectly in place, because the world we live in is so dynamic and things are moving, and I think we always need to continue to have those round tables and discussions. That way we can keep that improvement aligned, and I think so it's an ongoing transformation that all stakeholders need to be invested in.
Okay. So this leads to my next question to Dr. Noura. Dr. Noura, we understand that patient safety through vigilance is a motto of EDA. So the vigilance, how does exactly EDA is engaged? What are the initiatives which EDA is taking for having a better vigilance?
Well, regarding the patient safety and vigilance department, during the pre-market approvals, we obligate the company to be harmonized with vigilance department regarding higher classification, especially. They have to submit all documents about recall or FSCN or incidents. And our team are searching all the time in the website to see if there is any incident reported in any website to make sure of the safety of this product. And the company also have to submit a commitment that they are committed. If there is any incident after registration, they have to contact EDA and tell us about this report. This is regarding the vigilance, but regarding the marketing and the advertisement, about the medical devices, it all depends about the end user. If the end user is a doctor or healthcare professional, so the company is not allowed to make any advertisement for the public or for the patients, as they are not the end user.
Okay.
Only can make flyers or brochures for to be used with a doctor.
Okay.
Otherwise, no more advertisement. But regarding the medical Facebook or social media, as Dr. Faisal said, it's really hard to regulate, but we have our guidelines that the company have, if they have an influencer to with a material for promotion, they have to get our acceptance from EDA. And if there is influencer holding this training, they give us the link for the material,
Okay.
and we have to check it. If there is any thing that's not accepted, the company, it's the company's role to mention for the influencers to remove this link. Otherwise, there is a great penalty on the influencer if he refuses to do that.
Okay, that's quite comprehensive steps which EDA is taking. Well, Dr. Noura mentioned about the trainings or the courses or the CME activities which industry people usually conduct. So this leads to my next question to Mr. Mohamed. Providing CME and trainings is one of the tools used by most of the aesthetic companies to differentiate their products and differentiate them as a company. But sometimes this tool is misused, or not by Allergan, but by some other companies, it could be misused. So there could be some non-validated certification happening to some non-validated users of those training material. So have you faced such challenges like in the market? Do it impacts, obviously it impacts patient safety, but what is the scope of this misuse being done, and what will you like the regulators to do more about this?
Okay, so I cannot comment on other companies, okay, or other suppliers or manufacturers or their practices. It's something that is completely out of my scope, and I think that probably the rest of the team here is better equipped. What I can say is our internal practices. So our internal practices are probably even tougher than the regulatory framework, and this is something that we pride ourselves to have. And that is why we take this very seriously. And I think that the last point in my quick talk about the ethics in the aesthetics industry, we are part of a global organization. So Allergan Aesthetics is now part of AbbVie. Together, they're the fourth biggest pharmaceutical company in the world, and patient safety is extremely important across the organization. We're not only talking about the aesthetics business. So more and more, we're actually putting ourselves the right and the most stringent of guidelines. And I hope that the rest of the providers and the manufacturers would follow suit. But as one of the leaders, we just start and hope to set an example.
Thank you so much for your answer. Dr. Nazila, in your presentation, you mentioned that the situation of social media have become so vibrant and so easily accessible information for us. We can scroll through social media and see a lip filler injection being done live telecasted. So patients have become less patients, more consumers right now. So they go and ask for the treatments. So there is a hot topic going on in the rest of the world about changing the status of dermal fillers from a medical device to a prescription-based product. So what do you think will be the implication? Do you think the GCC market is ready for this step?
Well, that's a very controversial question, isn't it? So I think...
the topic of advertising is controversial.
I like it. Hot topics here. We've got the hot seat. Okay, well, I would say that it's one of two things. I think social media has got legs, and it's running a marathon, you know, so it's going for the medal. And basically, it's something that's uncontrollable at this minute. What do we do with that? Taking the registration of a product and changing it, will that change the dynamics of social media? I'm not sure, that's a question mark, but we have the governance and the experts sitting right here. So I think it really depends from a industry leader, from the governance of the authorities. How do we all see it might be different, but I think ultimately it doesn't change the dynamism of consumers wanting to be on social media and scrolling. So how the product is registered, in my humble opinion, probably won't change that. But what can we do to ensure that there are safer measures? That's a great question and topic to discuss further. I mean, what are your opinions on it?
As you said, it's a very complicated topic, in fairness, to talk about such a sensitive, let's say, billion-dollar industry. So it's very difficult. As a regulator, sadly, I will be on the hot seat because I will be the one saying yes or no for a lot of products. Shall they go online or they not? Which is sadly at the moment one of the situations we are forcing. We have a technical committee at the moment, as we speak, discussing how we will regulate online advertising. We did a brainstorming, and of course, neither of the ideas or thoughts that came up on the surface were applicable. Yes, from a perspective point as a regulator, it's perfect. It's perfect. It will reduce counterfeit product, false allegations, which is the most important part. As Doctor said, safety of the product is the main concern. That's what we are working for. We want to provide an easy access to the product, but also to be safe product to be used anywhere. But when we took the other side of the coin, the industry, they will be out of business because you have to go through the old traditional methods, whether it's going to be printed or emailed or such ways that you will lose a big margin of the market due to never having an access or very strict requirements that you cannot fulfill to go and on the platform, online platforms. So at the moment, it's a very hot topic, honestly, to give. We are going in this direction or that direction. It's also another issue. But to say there's some work is done, there are some. We started with some requirements and regulations in that part. As I said, we cooperated with other authorities that they are responsible for licensing these platforms. We try to enforce our regulations to make sure at least that this influencer or a web store or wherever the platform will be, that they are advertising for officially registered, licensed medical devices. This way, at least, I know there is a gap that I covered. The other part is still ongoing work. Shall be their fees on these websites? Should be licensed by the SFDA, not the other authorities? It will be under a lot of questions to be there, and there is a lot of decisions to be taken on high levels. But it's ongoing work, and of course, doors are open for all suggestions from the industry themselves, because they are our partners in this. So this is something for them to be used. So I'm sure they have also some ideas. Our doors are open for any suggestions.
Well, do our lovely audience have any questions for our panelist? Okay, we have a question there.
Hello, my name is Tariq Hanoura, Regulatory Affairs Manager at Colgate-Palmolive Company. I would like to thank our guest speakers for the very informative presentations and very dynamic and interesting discussions. Actually, I would like to highlight the point of shop online and the e-commerce environment, which is now very increasing, whether Amazon, Alibaba, Noon, and whatever. How the products or the medical device, if I may say, regulated, which is sold through these channels, regulated versus the official, registration path that all the companies should follow. This environment versus the official channels of registration and commercializing and selling. How this area can be controlled, because I might be in UAE and shop online for medical device in US or UK or whatever. How this medical device, in terms of safety, in terms of specifically consumer safety perspective, how the authorities and the customs control such a process? Thank you.
Well, that's a valid question, and so you are directing your question to Mr. Faisal?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Sorry. The sole concept of registering a medical device is to assure the safety. That's the bottom line of registering the device. The problem is when you have across the borders registrations. So let's say a product was registered in a certain country and then came to Saudi Arabia. We reevaluated the product, and which was the previous methodology or process or pathway of registration of that product. Now we do a full technical file assessment. So when it comes to the safety part, hopefully, and we say that our system, inshallah, we are 100% that whatever market devices are available in the market, they are safe and they will perform as they are intended and supposed to do. When it comes to the advertising, that's a different story. You can go, as I said, advertise. If I understood your question was, you are asking also about advertising, right?
Both advertising and bringing the cross-border product from outside the country, through these e-commerce companies like Amazon, Noon, whatever.
So I think the part of these major companies, Amazon and Noon, at the moment in Saudi Arabia, they are obtaining license to perform their, since they are major, and they are, let's say, the square zero experiment level. Now we are doing them. They are big enough. They can fulfill, I would say, harsh requirements at the moment until they are finally abolished. They can provide, because the main problem is when you are a small web store or you are an influencer, not all of them have the capability to, for example, to rent a warehouse. And for a platform, online platform, you're not talking about one product, or he's specialized in a category of products that he can have a shelf somewhere or a small storage room. We are talking about huge spaces that they need to get. And of course, based on the nature of those products, some of them are medical and some of them are not medical. So of the medical or non-medical, there are storage requirements. So we have to have controlled temperatures, controlled humidity levels, and etc. of the storage conditions. So we decided to go with the major names, and we try to see how it will fit in the requirements. Somehow it fit, and on the other hand, it was a bit harsh to implement. As I said, it's very hard at the moment. We are still walking with baby steps when it comes to online regulation, but hopefully soon we will have a better picture, and it will be easier for everyone.
Yes, we have a question. Okay. Yes, please.
Following my colleague's question, I would like to check with Dr. Faisal. A medical device is usually registered with the dispensing mode as pharmacy only. Putting it on an online store, which by definition is a virtual supermarket, how is this happening in KSA? Is there some kind of special approval obtained by the website office? What is the regulatory pathway of putting a pharmacy-only medical device on a virtual supermarket?
First of all, let's say, and should have mentioned this earlier, not all medical devices are allowed to be sold online. That's number one, because the high-level or high-risk devices, they cannot be sold without a prescription from a doctor. That's number one. Number two, most of the devices that will be available on the platform, they will be usually home-use devices. So, and that's because other devices needs to be used by professionals or within a healthcare facility. So that's a very critical point, that some of the web stores at the moment, due to the gap in the regulation, they are abusing this part. But what we do at the moment is public awareness, education. We try to make people understand that not everything available online is suitable for you. So that's what we are trying, along with, we are trying to also work with the other authorities to make sure that whatever is on those platforms is under the supervision of SFDA. And I urge everyone involved in this area of advertisement to go and check MDS G11. It have full information regarding the process of advertising requirements, and a small section dealing with online stores and influencers and how they should do, and can I advertise for one product in one advertising material or several products? There are several information. I think it will be very helpful for everyone doing advertising.
Doctor, sorry, back to the point of the advertising. For sure, the authorities controls currently the brochures, the leaflets, the POPs, the website for the companies. But when it comes to the influencers now, which is now increasing on the social medias like TikTok, Instagram, whatever, now these influencers act themselves like advertising material. If the companies are non-compliant or have false claims, there is for sure legal consequences for these companies and penalties. But when it comes to the individuals, influencers, what is the legal action and the consequences that authorities can take against these influencers, especially when they are outside the country, like cross-border? What's the legal action and the consequences that can be taken against these influencers?
You see, the problem is you have jurisdictions.
Exactly.
What's across the border, that's something out of your control. We cannot, as regulators or even legal enforcement authorities, we cannot persuade someone across, unless there is a felony or which is a complete different topic from the discussion in this session. But let's say the people within Saudi Arabia, yes, there are some influencers, they are considered themselves as some people who have medical knowledge or even just getting information from search engines, and they try to promote. This year in Saudi Arabia, no one can do that anymore. They are, at the moment, there is legal punishment, there are fines, and it can reach up to 5 years in jail for advertising, false information, plus if it's not authorized devices, which is another issue in the one. But let's say someone, I report it, and here is the part of the education for the public. Someone at home, me, my family, my parents, they saw something online which was not reasonable. Let's put it this way. There is no certification number, no solid information or a legal stamp or whatever of the authorization that will give you a source of confidence in this product. They can easily access the SFDA website reporting system, or just pick up the phone and call the hotline number. I have this suspicion on this and that, and then give the link. And SFDA, there is a post-market surveillance team, will take actions in that regard. And if they found, yes, there is a felony being committed, it will be raised to the legal authorities.
And I think this is a very, very valid point, that the authorities, the industry need to promote the platforms which are giving the legit information, so that they are ranking up as compared to the influencers.
Yes.
So that the common people who are consuming the information, they know that this information is credible. So probably this is one of the joint, action which the authorities and the industries can take together. Do we have any further question? Yes, ma'am.
So first of all, thank you so much to all the doctors who have presented very insightful and also very thought-provoking, I think. The information you're sharing for everyone, I always find regulatory to be quite complicated, but to get a straight answer, this is my perfect opportunity because I have manufacturers and also authorities sitting on the stage. So one question that I've really been trying to find a very straight answer towards is, when it comes to patient complications, and if a patient is at the end of a treatment not happy or there is a medical complication, where does the authorities, which aspect do you actually need to go towards? Is it the doctor in the clinic, or is it the manufacturer that is more responsible to deal with patient complications?
Dr. Noura, would you like to answer that question?
Sorry.
The question she asked is, when a patient is receiving a complication, so who the authorities are gonna put the complication responsible? Is it the medical hospital who is performing the treatment?
So it's either the doctor in the clinic who is performing the treatment, or the manufacturer,
First, if we have a problem with a medical device, we have an email for pharmacovigilance, and we have a website. It have an access for anybody. You as a patient or the doctor or anyone can report this incident, and we can check it. But we as an authority, we can communicate with the applicant, which is, you can say it's an authorized representative. He is the one that is responsible for this product, and he can connect us with the manufacturer, because the legal manufacturer is the one responsible for the safety and efficacy of the product. But as you know, in Egypt, I cannot communicate directly with the legal manufacturer, and I cannot make penalties or whatever on the legal manufacturer. So the victim will be the applicant, the Egyptian applicant.
Okay, I think that answers your question. We have time for just one last question.
If I may,
Yes,
just to add to this point, I think to have this answer is on several levels. So basically, if you are in a clinic and there was some incidents, or you are not happy with the service, first step is contact with the quality or complaints in the hospital or clinic itself. That's number one. They didn't help, you raise it up. Depends on each country. Some countries, they will have Ministry of Health, they will be responsible for happy with the service provided. But if it involves problem with the device itself, then that's where the regulatory authorities will be involved in that. And of course, there might be a recall on the device. There will be some actions and investigations that may happen.
Okay, so we have time for one last question, please. Yes, ma'am. There, please.
Yes, hello. First of all, I would like to thank you for the presentation. I have a small question. It's basically a continuation of a website sales. If it's a medical device, I know that most of them are medical device sold on websites, but if it's a medical device, and how can we control this if it's basically bought or ordered by a non-medical professional? Is it possibility to control it?
I think you mentioned
I didn't understand the question.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the purchase of a medical device by a non-medical doctor, right?
Yes, because a medical device, so injectable, let's say a filler, if it's sold online, and how can the government control it in order that that a medical professional can use it? and it's not like cosmetologist or an esthetician. Is it possible that a government can control this website?
Medical device in Egypt, it's very high regulated. No one can get one piece of medical device except it has a registration license if it's sterile, or an importation approval if it's non-sterile. Even the custom release, when they are detecting any batches or something like this in bags of any person coming from abroad, they contact us and they have to check if this product is registered or not. And if it's registered and a person is bringing this product not through its distributor or its agent, it's not allowed to get to our country without having permission. So it's illegal.
Okay, so I think that closes the session for today. We are sorry we cannot take any more further questions. So on behalf of ACRAS, I really want to thank all our wonderful speakers today.